I have since been to Gary's numerous times. A friendly, clean restaurant with a full dinner and lunch menu of the general American kind, with a touch of New Orleans. The soup is gumbo, the shrimp is Creole, the fish is catfish, and the sandwiches are po' boys. Otherwise, the pork chops are pork chops, the fried chicken is fried chicken, and the beers are mostly national brands. The standout item, not actually listed on the menu, is the homemade ranch dressing, a special that isn't advertised, but instead one you're apt to come across during a random Thursday night dinner when you're really hungry and when you don't want oil and vinegar. The secret ingredient to the ranch, if there is one, is a mystery. Attempting to identify it is only frustrating. One of those familiar yet somehow wholly unfamiliar tastes that puzzles the salad-eating mind and dazzles the senses. Possibly dill. My first Gary's meal was uneventful. A turkey po' boy dressed with lettuce, tomato, mayonnaise, and a small bowl of gumbo. Carol's lunch was more interesting. In fact, it paved the way for my new habit of imposing special requests on po' boy makers all over the city. Half a shrimp po' boy, the shrimp sautéed in olive oil and garlic instead of deep fried. One of the important things Carol taught me during this time was simply, don't be afraid to ask. The owner of Gary's knew Carol well, because of the restaurant's proximity to her office, and to most of her properties for that matter. Carol ate lunch at Gary's several times a week. She said she'd grown to like it a lot despite the fact that it was essentially just a sports bar with a small dining room. The food was good, the prices were low, and the owner was a decent guy, explained Carol. In fact, the owner had found Carol a few steady tenants over the years. He's a real personality, Carol said with a chuckle, wiping olive oil from the corner of her mouth. He serves this purpose. And he's a Saints fan, I added, having registered all the gold decor and emblazoned Saints footballs in a display case opposite the bar. Yes, said Carol, a certain breed of person. What breed is that? I inquired. Oh, I guess an eternal optimist, you have to say. Why not pessimist? I asked, seeing both as possible answers. A pessimist usually has more to lose, she began. He thinks that even the little luck he has can't hold out forever. The optimist is still waiting for his ship to come in, I added. Exactly. Interesting theory, I said to Carol. But which do you prefer? Which one applies to you? Me? Oh, probably neither. She took a second to think about it. I'm the girl on shore who's watching her ship sitting out in the harbor. It's supposed to be docking, but it's got engine troubles and can't make it in. But your ship's in the harbor, I pointed out to her. That's pretty good. Carol took a big bite out of her sandwich and chewed it with mechanically efficient movements. She smiled towards the door of the restaurant, swallowed the last of her bite, nodded, then shook her head. It's frustrating, my friend. Very frustrating. Her friend. Then she asked me how my turkey was. A deliberate change of subject. It's good. It's fine. Yeah, thanks for showing me this place. My pleasure, said Carol. Really. For a second I considered whether Carol might grow to like a guy like me. Maybe romantically. I watched her closely while she paid the bill up at Gary's bar. Even in her work clothes, maybe because of her work clothes, she looked as good as I'd seen her. It occurred to me then that if Carol and I had met in high school or even college, before she put on the friendly weight, I might have considered her just good-looking enough to be unapproachable. Specifically, it was the eyes. Her eyes were wise and generous, but also sharp, and suggested a possibly cruel kind of flirtatiousness somewhere in her past. a flirtatiousness that was no longer very active, but one that had probably worked well for her for a good many years. She was 40-something now, and the decades must have mellowed her. And meanwhile, she transformed herself into the hardest working woman east of the Mississippi. A little less angular than the old self, but a natural and welcome trade-off, I decided. One that endowed her standout landlady with a sexiness I wasn't used to. The owner of Gary's, who was sitting on a bar stool talking to his bartender, gave Carol his full attention. Carol made a short joke or pleasantry to the bartender. Then the owner, Gary, leaned back a bit and looked Carol up and down from his stool. He was about the same age as Carol, but definitely not a match. A wide-eyed football fan with moosed, thinning hair and a cell phone clipped to his black silver-tipped belt. "Thanks for lunch, Gary," Carol said knowingly to him, once she had her change in hand. "Any time, Carol," answered Gary, turning to face the TV again. "Come back soon." "Oh, I'm sure I will." Carol strode back to our table, smiled, and threw her chin toward the door. Back to work we went. Myself, a well-fed and newly fortified optimist.